Oh no! Oh no! What happened? Ah, there we are. Well, hello, and welcome back. With 7 seconds left on the clock, I finally updated the title to be the right thing. And here we go. So, I like, let's see, what do I do? Sorry, gathering thoughts here. So, welcome back. We're doing Beyond Code Live. I am still working with the PayPal Checkout API, and I'm getting to the point where we're ready to figure out what the database model is going to be around this for our users. And I am going to take what I did, and I started this PayPal Checkout demo project, but I'm actually going to take what I did and publish it as PayPalCheckout.js, which seems redundant because there already is a PayPal SDK officially from PayPal. But as I said, I don't really like it because it adds a lot of abstraction without adding a lot of value, and this adds very little abstraction. And also, it's not anything anybody can just do themselves. But that all said, I think for my purposes it's the right way to go. So I'm going to go ahead and create this repository, and let's see, I'm going to have to bring in from the, node PayPal demo. I'm going to need to get PayPalCheckout.js. I don't know if I actually need anything else. I'll probably take a few other things, actually. We'll take the license. We'll take the JS hint. We'll take the prettier configs. We'll take, let's see. What else do we need to take? Probably the example.env. No, I don't think that really is necessary. We'll find out if we need it. And then I do want some stuff from the README, but I don't want the whole README. So I'm not going to grab the README. I'm just going to grab this bit right here. To this point, to this point, to this point. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to create a README, and we're going to call this @root PayPal checkout. And I'm going to use, let's see if I can get to this from here. It's not going to let me grab it until, Whoa. I wanted to undo the tab from this process. Anyway, apparently I'm going to have to push first before it lets me see the description I set. But what this is in contrast to the official PayPal Checkout SDK, which is auto-generated code with lots of abstraction without much value. Whoops. Oh wait, where am I? Yeah, I'm in the right place. Okay, without much value. This is very little abstraction and and about as much value. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and we'll give some usage examples here. Well, I actually don't have usage yet, because there's not much to this. What do we call it? PPC equals require @root PayPal checkout. Hold on, I'm going to sneeze. It's going to... I couldn't stop it. Actually, I could. Do you know that you can stop a sneeze if you just stick your tongue to the roof of your mouth before you sneeze? Guaranteed. Guaranteed. It's not very satisfying though. A sneeze is very satisfying. You feel very good after you sneeze. If you stifle the sneeze by sticking it, and you're going to feel as though you're going to sneeze. So you're going to have that sensation, but then when you actually are about at the point of sneezing, nothing will happen. So it's not very satisfying, but it is effective. Let's see. Very low obstruction, but specifically designed to be idiomatic Node.js. Okay, there we go. That's what I expected. Let's see, require .env .config path .env. And I guess, I don't know what happens. It would be the current working directory, right? Yeah. Or would it be the directory that the code is in? I don't know what the default is. I'm just gonna take a little sidestep .env npm and check out. I also am going to create a fork of .env at some point so that I can add multi-line support and get rid of interesting. That's kind of cool. Glad that I saw this, as it were. See, people are coming up with interesting ideas to monetize open source. I think the day of open source monetization is coming. I think that software, fingers crossed, software could be about to get a lot better. Create in the root directory of your project, blah, 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 blah. What's the path? Read your.env, but where? Default. Process.cwd. Okay. Cool. So it would be appropriate to put this there. That is the same as the default, and I prefer explicit over implicit. So let's say client ID is equal to, I forget what the client ID looks like, and client secret. I guess I kind of want to keep, I kind of want to keep with the underscores because everything else about the API is underscores. So even though that's not idiomatic JavaScript, snake case, that's how the PayPal REST API is designed. There we go. All right, and then let me see what. Maybe I will bring over part of that example env. And I don't need all this stuff. Just, oh, those are very long. And this actually I would want to be personal. Yeah, so that seems okay. PayPal client ID. So it's whoa, no, I didn't want to do that. Dang it. Toot, toot, toot. Okay, getting rid of all that stuff, and then change this one again. And now the first thing I'm going to do is add this so it's staged. All right, I'm going to go ahead and add the JS hint and the prettier stuff. And then let's see, is the license the one I like to use? Yes, it is. Okay, good. And then we're going to move this from PayPal. Maybe we just call it PayPal Checkout JS. I guess that's appropriate. Okay. Alrighty. And then, let's see. I don't want to go too, I'm not going to publish this right now. I'm going to use it in kind of a beta way. So I won't spend too much more time on this because I do want to move on to the actual database stuff. But I want to give myself a way to access this as I'm going forward here. So I'll be able to use it via Git. And okay, so I'm going to move this out. And we're going to have test.js. Yeah. I'm going to have, let's see. Yeah, let's see. We'll use strict and then let. And then I think we can do this thing. Subscription. Let's see. It'll be plan, product, subscription if we're doing this. There we go. That's a fair way to do it. Plan ID. And then what do we want to do? Get rid of this, I think. To do. Wait for a user to click URL and accept. I could probably do something. Let's see, we could do await new promise. I actually saw some code for this that was pretty good in the PayPal SDK, or in the examples rather. So we've got, what is it? Resolve process.standard in.on data resolve. And we could have console.info. Let's see, we can do require .env.config and then path.env. If we don't have process.env.paypal, PayPal client ID, then we're going to process.exit and we're going to say console.error. Please copy example.env, to.env, and update the values from the PayPal API dashboard at, let's see, where did I get those values from? I think it was developer.paypal.com. Yeah, I think it is here. My apps and credentials. Yeah, I think this is it. Okay. And then what did I want to do down here? Please. Really, what is it? Subscription.links. I don't remember which one it is. Let me go look at the other code real quick. Node PayPal demo. No, not app. I want to look at server. Ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. What was I looking for? Dang it. No, go back here. Oh, I was looking for the name of the link. That's what I was looking for. Links. Okay, response.result.links. Is that what I'm looking for? Let me go check. I think over here there is a links. Okay. So should be dot links and then, oh bother, I'll have to do find. That's fine. Rel is going to be what? Approve, I think. Please approve the subscription at the following URL, and then hit the any key to continue. All right, console.info. Let's give it a little bit of white space before, a little bit of white space after, and then we're going to have approve URL is going to be subscription.links.find. And then we're going to have, well, let's call this link, return link.rel is approve. And then we should have here username. Should be process.env.paypal. What was it? Sandbox email? Yeah, so PayPal sandbox email, PayPal sandbox password. Email. Password. Password. Okay, I think this actually will work. And then this should be subscription.id. So this would be subscription pre-approval. And this will be subscription post-approval. Maybe we should say after. Yeah, before and after. Simpler words. Alrighty. All right. And we could wrap this in a function called prompt. Make it an async function. Return new promise. And then we could give it a function. I'm just going to leave it there. That's good enough as it is. Whoops. Okay. Console.log. I think it can turn most of these console.logs into console.infos. I don't think there's anything here that deserves to be a console.log. I think all of this is part of the manual test, as it were. Showing useful information. All right, so we create the product, we create the plan, we create the subscription, and then there we are. All right, something bad happened. Cool, so let's try this test out and see if it works. Cannot find module.env. So I guess we need to do first npm init, probably. PayPal checkout is ready to be used. Oh, whoops. This can go. Process. Yeah, there's no process.env needed here. So I will sync over the env files as well. And wait. Oh, I didn't grab the git ignore. There we go. Now I've got the git ignore. And then npm init. Package name will be at root PayPal checkout. I might alias it as PayPal checkout as well. We'll see. And we're just going to go with version 0.1 right now. A more sensible, node-centric REST API. Meh. Entry point, correct, node, test.js, get repository, keywords, PayPal, checkout, SDK, API, REST. REST API. Subscriptions. Okay, license MPL2, sure. Is this okay? Yes. Let's see. Hey, Will, what's up? I see that you've got a bad case of updog going on. Yeah. Every once in a while, Restream messes up and it doesn't actually show me that people are there. There we go. I had to hit refresh. Now I would have called out a little earlier, but I didn't see you join in because the little ticker didn't go. What's a crack-a-lackin'? Well, have you been watching any of this series, the PayPal series that I've been doing? Payment processing series. The first one was a doozy. I was just going down the PayFac rabbit hole. But now I'm actually doing some code and I'm getting a module ready to be reused. It's not really ready to publish per se, but ready to be reused. Savedev.env. Let's see. So is this ready to go? Root request. That's interesting. I forgot that I will need to copy over this. Oh, hello. Welcome. How you doing? I'm right now still working on taking some of the code that I was working on in the last session and just getting it ready to be used in the server test environment rather than localhost, the server test environment. And then once I get this in a good place, then I'm going to switch over to figuring out the database modeling. Postgres, always Postgres, always Postgres. Not a good reason to use any other database as far as I'm aware. Unless, yeah, what else would someone use? I hear that some people use Mongo, but I don't really get why. And I know that people use MySQL, but that generally seems to be out of the accident of not being aware of what databases are available and having heard of MySQL from somebody. MySQL is kind of it's the old fungus that sticks around because it does. All right, so I need to copy over this utils folder. There we go. And then I need to copy over node PayPal demo. What was it? In the package.json, I have the post install. Yes, that's what I need to copy here. Scripts, post install, and then npm install. So the post install should run. And it looks like I need to do one other thing, which I need to do fs.mkdir sync. And then I think I need to do recursive true and just give it, I guess, dir name plus lib. I think that works. We'll find out momentarily. Cool. All right. And then with this, one thing that I'm really sad that they don't put in here by default is the files array, because with this you can make sure that junk doesn't get uploaded. So the only thing that needs to go on npm is whatever's in lib, and I think that's it. I don't think anything else needs to go. Categories JSON. Categories.json. Where's that at? It is here. categories.json. Lib, there we go. Ba-da-da-da. Okay, cool. So now it gives me the URL. Oh, I should have done .href. I will do that next time. So Mongo is less annoying in regards to just inserting stuff into the DB. But here's a question. Why not just use Postgres and then have a text column that is JSON? What advantage does Mongo give you over that? Yeah, and then you could just have in your schema or in your query, you could just do on conflict. You could do insert on conflict update. And so if you do insert on conflict update, then you don't have to worry about that either. Okay, I'm going to log in, personal account, my fake personal account, as it were. See sandbox.paypal, and then go ahead and approve. All right, and then I should put the hit the any key to continue afterwards. There we are. Oh, okay. Couple of things I need to do then. So to fix this test, first is links. We need to do .href, and then I should put this bit. Let's move this down to here. Hit the any key to continue, and then the standard in.on should be standard in.once. Now let's try this again and see if we get a little further. Okay. Get that URL. I'll charge it to my credit card. Come back around, get example domain, hit enter. And unfortunately, I guess I have to pause it for it to work right. Oh, that's why they had the process.exit probably in the SDK example, is they probably didn't pause standard in. Anyway, that looks good now. Done. Hit the any key to continue. Did you approve it? There we go. All right, this should be right now. Let's try one last time. So it's going through, hitting the APIs, gives me the URL. I go through. I deduct the monies. I get back to example domain. I hit the any key, and boom, voila. Great. Cool, and status is active. That's exactly what I wanted. All right, cool. So this is all good. This is good enough for a v-none, I guess. Whoops, git add utils, git add test, git add everything. And then what I'm going to git ignore will be lib categories.json. And what do we have here for star.js? Just test.js? Great. Cool beans. So I'm just going to run this as initial commit. And I'm going to tag it as v0.1.0. And I'm going to push up. There we go. So now, for anybody that's following along, as this gets updated, here we go. Oh, and that's totally wrong, but that's okay. All right, so now I'm going to move along. I'm going to go to the server where I've got the database running. Oh, sorry, I wasn't checking all of the messages here. When you use JSON, because the pattern I'm using is normalized that. Used to is normalizing that. I guess you were making a point about using text JSON column equivalent to MongoDB. Yeah. Yeah. So, but that's a question though. I guess the potentially good thing, I don't know. I don't know where you run into cases where, for average people, I don't know where, or rather not people, but for average applications, I don't know where you run into the case where SQL injection is a problem, because all of the libraries, they just show you how to do, everything supports parameterizing SQL queries down to the database itself. Databases supports parameterizing SQL queries. The SQL generators support parameterizing queries. The SQL executors support it. So I don't really know what the benefit of Mongo is. And I've heard people that are Mongo heads talk about the benefits of Mongo, but I'm not a SQL head. I was into the whole NoSQL database thing at the time. I thought it was really cool. I was drinking the Kool-Aid. But I used a couple of them, and I just didn't find them to be that useful or that versatile, and it seems that they have more problems and more edge cases than just SQL databases. So I think if you want to have a generic key value store, you could do it with SQL, but then you can also, it's very easy, just as easy as it is in Mongo, I guess, to iterate through every row in the database and then upgrade that row, add more columns and indexes, whatever, and then upgrade that. So, yeah. All right, so now we're going to get to the part where I actually go log into the server that has the database and we do some stuff. So I'm going to go into my demo project, which is the Bliss API. So here, this is bliss.js.org. If you log in, then you can sync encrypted documents. And I have this where there's going to be a Bliss Pro. So you're going to be able to upgrade. And if you upgrade, then you're going to get a higher number of documents that can be synced, and the document limit size is going to go up, and so on and so forth, total size. So that upgrade button is I don't know, going to pop up something. We're going to pop up something there. But first I need to figure out the database model. And even before that, I'm just going to go ahead and add this dependency at root PayPal checkout. What? Oh, I didn't publish it yet, duh. We're getting there. But for right now, and I might do that as a different session. But let's just go ahead, npm install, save, and then I guess I'll just use whatever the latest is for now. I think when it puts it into the package.json, let's see, module not found. Oh, utils. Oops. Okay, let's fix this. So I need to put in here utils. Or, wait a minute. I think what I need to do is make this a prepare. Is it prepare? I forgot what it is. It doesn't really need to be a post install. It needs to be a prepare. Let me go check that out real quick. npm pre-install, post-install, prepare. npm scripts. I think it's called prepare. Runs before package is packed, before it's published. Runs on local npm install. Right, that's exactly what I want. Prepare. So let me get rid of this npm install. Oops. And now that exists. Yep, it does. Good. That's exactly what I wanted. And then I will update one thing about this while I've got it open. Which is I'm going to go down to the subscription section here and reference actually subscriptions itself. There we go. Let's see. There we go. Bug fix. Post install to prepare. And push that. And then I should be able to run this again and hopefully get the latest. All right, that looks like it's working. Did we disagree? I mean, if you've got a use case for Mongo where Mongo's the better option, I don't know that I have anything against Mongo. I just don't have anything for it. And SQL, I think you'd agree, SQL is more powerful in general. At some point, you're going to want your database to run on SQL. I don't think that I know production databases do run on Mongo, but I don't think that you'd make that choice intentionally. If you knew something was going to go into production, I don't think that you'd put it on Mongo if you were thinking ahead. Or, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Tell me if there's a use case where Mongo is better, where it's more performant, where it's easier to scale, if it's got some sort of advantage over a SQL database. But as far as I know, SQL databases have the advantage across just about everything. I know that people say, oh, you can't scale SQL, blah, blah, blah. But, obviously that's not true because Redshift is a Postgres, has a Postgres adapter at least. I think it's a modified version of Postgres. CockroachDB, modified Postgres. And then Postgres itself does have its own clustering whatchamajigs. So pretty much all of the databases that are scalable databases that are SQL, I think they all have a Postgres adapter. Okay, so this ran now. That's great. Now I got to think about what we want these migrations to look like. Let's see if I can even remember how to do this. npx, what is it? Connects migrate, maybe? And then I give it a name. Subscriptions? Maybe? Add subscriptions? I'm going to have to check my README. See, this is why I put stuff in the README even when... Oh, no. What? It's not in the README here? Seriously? Well, I'll be darned. I could have sworn I had this in the README for the specific reason that I can never remember how to do these things. I put it somewhere. Let me go check my... and open up another tab for this so I don't crowd that one that's already too crowded. My node Docker seed. Maybe I updated the README here. I swear I updated the README somewhere because connects. Because anyway, typically I add these things to the README as I go. And this now, this doesn't feel right. Something's wrong here. This is the Bliss API, right? Yeah. What's going on? Okay. All right, let's see. I guess this was out of date. Okay, let's see what's going on here. That looks right. App URL. Okay. Is there anywhere else where that has a thing? Package JSON lock. Oh, I'm never going to worry about package JSON lock. And the reason, by the way, I do npm install because npm install will update package lock, but you don't want to run npm install in general, only when you're adding things or you're doing it local. For any type of documentation that's publishing to the world, it's always npm CI because npm CI will not update packages. It will install the ones that are known to work. Okay, so let's do npm install here. That's interesting. How could it have an old lock file? I'm a little confused. Am I using old node locally? No, I'm not. So why is it claiming that there's an old package lock.json? No, well, here's the thing. The npm CI did not exist for a very long time, and it's got a stupid name. So what it really should be is npm install should have that behavior by default, and npm update should do an install and do an update. I have not been able to figure out what npm update does. As far as I can tell, npm update does nothing. I'm very confused about it. If you can figure out what npm update does and tell me, I would appreciate that. But it's because they changed the API and yada, 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 yada. Okay, it doesn't exist. I don't understand what this is talking about. Old lock file. Okay, something is really wrong here. Get diff. Get diff cached. Interesting. Why would it change the version of Node that it's on? Node version? Am I on too old a version of Node? All right, let me just upgrade Node here. And then I'll npm install -g TypeScript and JS hint and what are the other? I think there's two more things. Prettier. I think there's one more thing that I typically need, but I don't remember what it is, so we're going to leave it off right now. Okay, we are at node 1611 now. npm install. Hey, welcome to the channel. I'm AJ. What's your name? And what brings you here today? Let's see. On the other hand, I've been learning a lot about the find command. Fairly powerful if you know how to use it. So I'd also recommend checking out FZF and FD, both of which I think I have in the doobly-doo. So it's on webinstall.dev. So if you check out webinstall.dev, you'll see both FD and FZF. And those are useful commands. FZF is fuzzy find, and FD is a modern find implemented in Rust. Okay. So what is going on here? I don't know what's going on here, but I know. Oh, there it is. Connects right there. Huh. And we should rename this to Bliss API. And this is the API for syncing encrypted drafts on bliss.js.org. Okay, and there must be npx connects. Oops. I think it's migrate. Maybe it's migrate create. Some new feature. Add new table. I think this is what it's going to be. Okay, connects. No. npx connects migrate help, maybe? Migrate add. Okay, connects -- help. Maybe migrate new? Migrate make. There we go. Yeah, but I like to add the simple stuff to the README because it's so simple that it's often forgotten, and it turns out it's still useful. Okay. Use strict. It's a pity that they haven't updated the connects migrations just to have the use strict. Anything that's auto-generated should have use strict. Just end of story. And then async, because they are in fact asynchronous. Now I got to think about this. Let me go look at my other ones. Oh, I'm not in fish either. Let me go ahead and get into fish. That way I've got my auto completes and all that. Let's just go take a look at the users table. I think we're kind of going to have, it's going to be the same thing. I'm just going to copy this over. And we're going to think through it. Migrations 2021 011, right? No. 11. There we go. Okay. What? No. Stop. 10? Add subscriptions. There we go. Yes, this is it. Okay, now I'm going to hollow out a lot of this. I'm going to keep the timestamps there. I like having timestamps there. And then we'll add a deleted at too, I think, or revoked at. And then, yeah, we just need the one table as far as it, well, we're probably going to need a couple of tables, but let's just take it as it goes. Okay, so I was thinking about this before, and let me just pull up what I was thinking about. Database. Where's it at? Come on. Oh, is it in the other one? Okay. So for what I'm doing, I don't necessarily need the product to be in the database. I can put it there. I cannot put it there. It doesn't matter that much because I could just have it in JSON. I don't really need the plan to be in the database either. In fact, the plan, so if we look at the way that PayPal has it structured, the plan can be quite complicated. And so I don't know how I'd want to flatten that into the database. And so I am more of the opinion of the plan really ought to be JSON for right now, especially because I need to understand how I'm going to have it work across at least 2 different services. So it's going to work across PayPal and it's going to be working across who I'm using for payments for credit cards. The reason I'm supporting PayPal is because it is good for the end user. I think, if I'm not mistaken, well, one of the payment services I'm using uses the NMI gateway, and it's actually the documentation is really straightforward, much easier to navigate than PayPal's documentation. Now, the subscription, remember, is the relationship between the user and a billing plan. So let's say this is billing plan, and the subscription is the plan X user. And so we're going to need to have a user foreign key. And then I think I don't like polymorphic tables. I think we'll see, but I think it's better perhaps to have a wider table where the null columns generally collapse anyway. Because it's a bounded set of which payment services you're going to be using. So the thing that you've got these constraints, and it would be nice to say, well, if the PayPal ID is filled out, then the Amazon and Google IDs can't be filled out. And the database doesn't really have a way to say that. But if the user subscription is through PayPal, then it's only through PayPal. If the user subscription is through Amazon, then it's only through Amazon. It can't be both. And so this violates one of the normalization principles to do it this way. But no matter which way you do it, it ends up violating a normalization principle. So if you've got some suggestions, feel free to throw them at me because we could think through this a little bit. But I kind of like the idea of saying a subscription. And then there's another thing about the user that I wasn't thinking about at first, which is the user, and I don't even know if I want to support this for my own use case right now, but the user could be on a tier, and they could be on the tier because, so let's say the name of the tier is Pro, and the payment type, which I'd actually want to go look at PayPal to see, because they have a name for this. I don't remember what the name is. I think they do. But the payment type is subscription. Or the payment type could be a one-time payment. And I guess maybe we could say maybe this is payment. Maybe it's not subscription, maybe it's payment. And then one of the fields is recurring. Whoops, I guess we could have left that other one in there. So this would be true. Whoops. Can't use the pipe here. But I'm not really sure what it ought to be. And so I'm just kind of thinking it through at this point. But we have a relationship. So we want to know, is this a pro user? Is it a basic user? You know, so a name is equal to basic, pro, business, enterprise. And maybe that is the plan. But whatever the user is going to be tied to something that they paid. So I want to say, why is this user a pro user? Well, they're a pro user because they paid for it. And that's the part where I'm actually not super clear on what that needs to look like yet. So I might talk out loud, or I might just think to myself for a minute as I consider this. But if you've got some thoughts, throw them here. I'm going to check over here a little bit. Do you want to, okay, you want to, Will, you want to get on Discord? I can do Discord if you want to chat and brainstorm through it together. That actually would be really helpful to rubber duck it. Well, more than rubber duck it, because I'm rubber ducking it right now. But to actually be able to argue through it. So feel free to give me a call through Discord. Is it all right if I patch you in on the stream? I guess I have to wait 15 seconds for you to hear me say what I said. So anyway, give me a call on Discord. And actually, let me go here. Okay, we're going to put this through the display audio. We're going to take the volume down a little bit. Boom. So the user is going to be on a plan. I can't think of a way to do this that doesn't break normalization. And it's okay to break normalization. Normalization is the rule, and there are always exceptions to the rule. All right, so let me think about it in the user interface. I'm thinking too much about the data. I need to think about the user interface. In the user interface, what would I say? I would say you're on the whatever plan. And you can only be on one plan at a time. So it makes sense that what we actually do is add a subscription ID to either we want to call it the user or the account. Oh, you're ringing me on Discord. Sorry, I didn't hear it. That's strange. Oh, you got to put on headphones.
Oh, yeah, sorry. No, I'll got it.
Yeah, I've got, because otherwise I got to do this weird thing to patch the audio through. Well, I guess it's not a weird thing, but it's just something that's not intuitive to get right every time. I don't remember how I have I have to go look up how to do it. Unfortunately, when I did it, I didn't write a blog article about it. But there's this thing called VB cable. And so I have to route the output through VB cable and then have it route back through the headphones as well. Otherwise, I just have to put you close enough to the microphone that you get picked up by the microphone. Anyway, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it good or?
Speak a little louder.
Okay. Let's do.
It's just because the mic is actually further away. So you'll be a little quieter than I am on the stream, but that's fine. Anyway, let's talk through this. You don't have to worry about it too much. But I could have had a subscription in the past. So maybe this doesn't quite make sense. Are you still there? I can't hear you if you are.
Oh.
Now I hear you. Now
Oh.
I heard oh.
Oh. There. Okay. Sorry, my switch just turned on. It's possessed.
Of course.
Yeah. I gotta find the charger cord because my phone might die. Alright. So you got users, foreign key, PayPal ID, MS. You know, my first instinct when I see that is to have, is to like normalize that.
Well,
And it would be like a.
but here's the question: how would you normalize it?
Where I'm getting with that, though, right?
Well, but here's the question: how would you normalize it? Because you're going to do. Okay, you're either going to do this, right? Let's walk through it. So you're either going to.
It might be. It might be AHA. I might be abstract. Avoid hasty abstractions. Right. But what I was thinking was you have a separate table. It's a third party ID or something like that. And it would have an ID, a name, and when it was maybe some metadata, like when it was created, if it's still active, and then you would just have like the user table. Man, yeah, this would actually be two other tables. So you would have vendors with.
Are you still seeing the screen as well? Although the screen's probably coming through a little bit
it's
slower.
It's really, yeah. Let me catch up and see what you got.
So I know that there's a couple of strategies for this, but one is you bloat the number of tables and then you have polymorphic associations.
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily.
The nice thing about that is that when you delete a service, if you cascade on that, then that's automatic cleanup, you know.
So which one? When you
So like for example, we delete PayPal, say we're never going to do PayPal, we're migrating to something else, you delete that, and as a foreign key, it'll cascade on update and on delete, and then it'll delete all the users' data that is tied to that, like automatically. It's just regular cascade.
So this is not desirable for a couple of reasons. One, generally speaking, I don't believe that you should delete data, because data is.
Do you think soft delete?
Yeah, so I do deleted at.
Okay, that works too.
So, well, that doesn't cascade. The other thing is, we wouldn't want this to cascade, because if the user, let's say that they just did a PayPal subscription, they just paid, in that case, they are up to date. Well, and the other thing is, even if you do generally delete records, if it's financial data, you don't delete that unless you have an event log that you keep track of things that way. But you don't want to delete anything to do with financial or security. But then
For sure.
if you have the if the user just paid their $10 and then you were to disable them on the basis that PayPal was disabled, well, they'd be rather upset because they're still out of the $10.
You would need like a migration plan, and you would have to ask them if they want to do it or just force it. Yeah, that's bad. I'm just spitballing, trying
No.
to figure out what your intentions are.
No, I get it. I get it. No, that's what I want.
Yeah.
So yeah, in about 15 seconds, you'll see the small number of updates that I made here. Let's see if we can go down.
Are you a big fan of enums?
Depends on what you mean by enum, but
Like database enums.
well, it depends on what you mean by database enums. I'm not a fan of the column type enum, but I am a fan of the using it because you can create an enum. So, for example, we could do, let's say, I'm going to call this pay services. We can make pay services into an enum by saying, it has a name. Well, in this, and then the name is equal to, say, PayPal. And then we can make a pay services FK, say, over, what would it be, this one? Pay services FK. And then that is an enum if the constraint is in place. So we could call it name or we could call it ID, pay services ID. But that is an enum because it will validate the constraint against the foreign key in the pay services table. So if it doesn't exist in the pay services table, it's not there. The problem I have with enums and database tables is that if you need to add something to the enum, you can't because it destroys the integrity.
Oh. So, well, what is it possible to say enum equals 1 and then this enum equals 2? Is it possible to do that? It's like
well, that's kind of what it does internally. But if you do this, then you get the best of both worlds. Well, you get the best of all worlds because your enums are strings that are very small, such as PayPal, Amazon, whatever. So you have a very small string. That way, when you do a select on the database, you don't have to join it. When you do the insert on the database, the integrity is checked. So you're guaranteed that you get a valid value, that it's not an arbitrary string. And then if you need to add something else to the enum, it doesn't break the integrity constraints because at any time you can add a new string to the pay services table. And
validating all the other data.
Yeah. And I don't...
Is that what you had to do in order to update? You had to migrate the whole table?
If you add something to an enum, depending on the database, you have to read out every single record, store the value of the enum somewhere, and then update
update it with the new one.
The enum, and then rewrite every single record with the value of the enum. Ideally, it should just add, because what an enum is essentially it's a tiny int, I think.
Yeah.
And so
I think they're supposed to have to be unique values, but I'm not sure. Would it make sense if it wasn't? I mean, I guess if you wanted aliases, but I would imagine since the way it sounds that updating enums is, it sounds like they have to be unique.
Well, yeah, they do have to be unique, but the thing is, you can't add and remove from an enum as a type in some databases. I think most databases don't allow you to do that. But if you create a table and use the table as the enum, you get all of the benefits and no drawbacks.
Right. And
So,
it's normalized.
and it's very easy as a developer to read and understand. If you're inspecting the database, it makes perfect sense. So I would recommend that if you ever have the use case of an enum, that you just create a table where all of the values that are allowed to go in there go. And yeah, that table maybe will be a table that only ever has 10 values in it, but that's fine. Because if you ever need to change something, and then you get the cascading benefits. So if we needed to change the ID of PayPal to be paypal.com or something like that, then you could get the cascading update where you change it in the enum table and it propagates. So I don't,
Yeah.
because it's just, enums are essentially syntax sugar overdoing that anyway. So might as well just avoid the syntax sugar.
I can see that.
But anyway, so the problem that I have with doing the subscription service table idea, or wait, what is it? Now I've got too many similar things that I'm looking at. Okay, yeah, because this is supposed to be the type and then the ID, and then I guess it would go. So if you ended up, you'd end up. So this ends up being a join table between, what would it be? User and what? And then it would be either the PayPal table or the Amazon table or the credit card table. That type of thing I don't like to do. I wouldn't
I
want.
was more thinking.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh no, yeah. Well, so let's see. What was I thinking? I was thinking like you would have primary key, then you would have pay services ID to be a foreign key, and then you'd have the actual value. And that's how you could attach multiple vendor IDs.
What do you mean the actual value? What would the actual value be? Actual value of what?
Or so isn't. Oh, I'm reading this wrong. So you put PayPal underscore ID, Amazon underscore ID. You're actually linking into. I see what you're doing. What I was thinking was a normalized table where you have the primary key, that the primary key of pay services. So, for example, it's like one, and that's PayPal, and then whatever data you need to store in there. So I'm thinking like, then that doesn't work for. I mean, unless you want to put JSON, like you're saying, or a text blob, it doesn't really normalize it. But
Well, in essence, you have to, because
yeah,
even if I was going to have a separate table for PayPal and a separate table for Amazon, their structures are different in such a way that if I was going to store the information about PayPal subscription, I would just want to store it as JSON and then add a couple of columns that maybe I index on. But I'd want to store the PayPal response as JSON so that I could go back and look at that information at the time that the subscription was made and understand it fully. Or maybe I wouldn't, because I can just go grab it from PayPal. PayPal has the information stored if I just go fetch it. I guess it depends, because I think there are certain pieces of information that don't get stored. But in any case,
the only issue with that, I guess, is how large can these, like what it sounds like is like you have a subscription and it's just like a blob of just, it is JSON. You got JSON and it's like, subscription ID, access token or bearer or stuff like that. And it would vary depending. And I guess a JSON column wouldn't. I mean, as long as it's not super huge.
So I guess let's go back up to the subscription, which is a plan by user. So we need, say, plan FK, and plan is, say, free. Well, free wouldn't be there, but let's say basic, pro, biz. Let's say that that's what the plan is. So we have a user, and the user over time could have had multiple different types of subscription. And if they upgrade, then we would, I guess, just have to prorate them.
Yep. Yeah. Or if they go down, if they downgrade, you'd have to.
Actually, I think what it would be is if they upgrade, we would just include what is left over on their plan. We would just include that into the upgrade. So if they already paid $10 and they're going to upgrade to the $100 plan, we would just charge them $90. And if they were really cunning, then they could do it on the first day of the month or the last day of the month. I don't know how it would.
Oh, some kind of race condition where.
Well, so that they pay the least amount of money to get the. I don't know. It doesn't matter because we just like no matter when they paid it, if they've already paid, then we just apply the amount that they've paid to what they're upgrading to. Or I don't know. That doesn't matter, and that's outside of the use case of what I have immediately. But so we're going to have a user. The user's going to be on a plan, and so the subscription is going to be the user by the plan, and then we're going to need a record, essentially, of where do I go to find out more about this? So the things that are going to be needed all the time is I'm gonna want to be able to pull, I guess, the most recent non-canceled, or I don't know if canceled is the right word, complete, finished. I guess it's canceled because they subscribe until they cancel. And if they upgrade, then they cancel the previous one and whatever. Figure out the math on that later. But I need to be able to know which service they came through, and I guess I wouldn't really. Maybe it could be like you said. Maybe it could be an ID and a type, because I don't think that I'm going to join on. Yeah, I think you're actually right, because I'm not going to be joining on something. I'm not going to join their PayPal ID locally because the PayPal ID is a separate service. I have to make an API call with the PayPal ID to do anything useful. And the same thing with these other ones. If it's an Amazon ID, whatever type of ID it is, unless it's the credit card payment ID is something that I'm going to have locally in my own database. But for the sake of simplicity when coding, I wouldn't treat it any differently. I would fetch the user subscription information, and then if I needed to know more specifics about the payment, then I would make a separate call, whether it's a function call or a REST API call or whatever. I'd make a separate call to get more information, and I wouldn't optimize for the case of, oh, I already have their credit card information, and I'm not gonna optimize for that case. Plus, I wouldn't know until I get the data back whether or not I should optimize for it. So yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it should be service name, which would be PayPal or Amazon or.
I was going to suggest an ID, but a name actually makes it more readable.
Well, but that's the thing. There's no difference between a name and ID.
Right.
Because you just set the ID to be a human readable string. There's no reason to have a random ID for an enum.
Yeah. And you don't even need a primary key as long as it's all unique.
Well, I'd still put that in there.
Oh, okay.
Because if I go to delete it, how would I delete it? You know, if I'm going to cancel the subscription, how would I cancel a subscription if it doesn't have a primary key?
Right.
Especially because, well, I don't believe in having statuses for many things except for something that inherently is stateful. So such as I wouldn't have a pending at versus an active at. I would have created at, activated at, last paid at, canceled at. And then I might not even... Go ahead.
If one of those is null, you can tell in which process it's currently in. It can be in pending if activated at is null.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Created at. Yeah.
So I don't even need the status because I can check activated at. Yeah. So pending if not activated. And then the last paid at would be something that's crystallized for optimization, because really I'd have a record of payments, which would be its own separate table. And the last paid at would just be a way for me not to have to join with the payments table, because whenever I update the payments table, I would update the subscription table. Now, the other problem is that, I might need an ends at, or be able to set canceled at in the future, because let's say that they do a one-time purchase and they say, I'm going to do a one-time purchase for 1 year. Or I'm going to do a one-time purchase for 2 years. And they don't actually subscribe. They just do a one-time purchase. Then I need to know when it ends so that I don't continue to give them services past the time.
Yeah. Well, you could also you could rename that to, I don't know, a resell at, because then if they have a subscription that's only like a one-shot thing, you can, like, if there was a way to recognize it as a one-shot thing, you could say, hey, you've been with us for a year, we'd love having you. Do you want to re-up? Or, I don't know.
Yeah. We also have
you could kind of
start date and end date. I don't know if that stutters a little bit because it's got type information in the name. Start at, end at.
Start at, yeah. That sounds good.
Yeah, and then end at either needs to be null or needs to be in the future.
Or, actual date, yeah, in the future, yeah.
Okay.
Do you have a way of knowing if it's one shot? Oh, I guess it would.
So if it's one shot, then I would put the end at. I would set the end at to be, because the end at would be null.
You'd be able to tell if. I guess somebody bought a subscription, then it would just,
there would be no end at. End at would be null.
Interesting. Yeah.
So then the question also becomes, subscription is not the right name for plan by user. What would it be? Tier? What does that become? Or is it just plan user? So we call it
User.
Do we call it plan underscore user? Or do we call it tier?
Well, I central part of this is the user, but actually we're not even storing user information. It's like, yeah, no, so probably not.
Well, there's another table that's the user table.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, so this one, this could be.
I
What
feel like subscription. Well,
do we have a term for crystallized information? Because it seems that there should be a term for calculated. Calculated. That's what it is,
oh, okay.
right? So so for example, if you look at your bank transaction history, and your bank every night your bank runs a batch job and it updates your balance. And whenever you look at your bank website, it always shows you pending transactions and it shows you available balance. And your available balance is the balance that was calculated last night plus all transactions that have run today before the batch job that redoes the calculation. So every day in your bank's database table, there is a current balance value that is potentially out of date, but they don't rerun every transaction you've ever had over the last month or the last year to give you what your balance is. Every night they calculate your new balance, and then every time you log in and look at it, it gives you your calculated balance and then replays the transactions through the day to give you the available balance.
Yeah.
And that's the term that I'm looking for. Is it calculated or computed or cached? Maybe
Tentative. I don't know. I mean, because it's going to change, right? So a tentative. I kind of feel like tentative.
But it's not tentative. But when in a database, the specific concept of in a database, you duplicate a piece of information because it is information that is the result of a calculation, and you don't want to rerun all potentially million records that lead up to the final calculation.
Oh, okay.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or so every time the user changes their subscription, I actually want to update two tables. I want to update the subscription table that's going to have all their subscription information, but I don't want to join on the subscription table every single time I get user information. So I would duplicate their subscription into the user as well. So let me go here, and I'm going to add a new column to the user table that's going to be, I guess, probably called plan, and that is going to be cached. Let's see. Plan is going to be cached so that even though the information is also available if I join user to subscription, I can get what plan they're on based on whichever subscription is created recently and not ended yet. But if I want to avoid that join...
What Vim box drawing stuff do you have?
What's that?
What Vim box drawing stuff do you have? You got some like macros that automatically widen the box.
It's prettier.
Oh. Dude, okay, cool. That's
Yeah.
cool.
It's just a markdown file. See? It's just a markdown file. And then, yeah.
That is awesome.
Then when I save, runs prettier, and prettier draws the table to the correct width.
Yeah, buddy. That is cool.
So yeah, I think I would add this so that I'm not... it's technically it's duplicate information, but if I'm going to update subscription, I'll update the user at the same time. And if those somehow get out of sync, then I'll fix it. If somebody emails support and says, "Hey, I just upgraded to the pro plan, but it says that I'm still on the free plan," then I just go,
Oh, when we run our batch, will that calculate what transfers over?
Well,
say
that
upgrade or downgrade or whatever.
if they do that action, the only reason that information wouldn't be there is if something happens where one action succeeds and the other doesn't. And it may not make sense to have that be in a transaction. And it might make sense because in some cases you can just put it in a transaction. You can say, okay, add this record to the subscription table. Open transaction, add record to subscription table, update user table, close transaction. That's probably what I should do in those cases because it'll be an all or nothing. Either you cancel the subscription and change the user's plan, or you upgrade the subscription and change the user's plan, or you do neither. But it would be very, very rare. It'd be the server restarts in the middle of the database update or something.
Very unfortunate. That would break the atomicity of your transaction.
Well, it wouldn't if it's a transaction. It would only do that if it's not a transaction.
I guess it would be forced to have to finish it, right?
Well, the other thing is the canonical data is stored in another system. So, that part of the reason of the subscription having an activated at would be that if I see the person has a subscription that's been created, but it's not been activated, then I should take the ID. So this should be, it should be service. What do we have an external ID? Or what do we call it? Extern? I don't know. But I would take I would take the PayPal ID and I would go check the PayPal API and I would say, hey, did the user ever complete this subscription? But it does make the query for the subscription to be quite complex because that query is going to look like select, let's say star from subscription where. So let me write this out here and do a little SQL. I probably don't have it. I don't have anything to do SQL highlighting. It's so sad. There's very few tools out there to do SQL highlighting because every single SQL dialect is different. And
there's got to be a PG. There's got to be a Postgres one.
Yeah, there probably is, but then do I have to end my file in .pg SQL or something in order to get that? How would it do in Markdown?
You could do set file type equals, I don't know, PG.
Well, but then prettier and the syntax highlighter, inside.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I would do select star from subscription where, and the first thing is user.id is equal to user fk. And then we'd have and activated at is greater than or equal to now. Or no. Activated at is not null. And end at, oh gosh, then it gets more complicated because the end at's going to have two conditions. End at is not or is null, or end at is greater than now, and
that is null, or and that is in the future.
So anyway, the queries, they start to get more complex than just checking IDs because you're going to be checking dates, and then if you're checking a date, then let's see, does that force a table scan? So anyway, forcing a table scan meaning that you create a condition where you can't effectively index, and I don't think it does. because you can basically index dates the same as strings, so that shouldn't force a table scan. But if anytime you do a calculation, for example, you force a table scan. So if I was to say end at plus 1,
Oh yeah.
that would force a table scan because it would have to do a calculation on every row and it wouldn't be able to use any indexes. But anyway, so the problem with the subscription table joining it every time is that its queries will become complex because of the rules that it will have. And then if I want to check for pending, then what I need to check is activated at is null, and let's see, and canceled at is not null, and then I'd need to, end at is null, or end at is, greater to than now. And what else would I need to check? I think maybe that's it right there. So the queries on the subscription would get a little, I guess that's not too complex. And then I guess I don't need start at, because that activated at would be when it starts. So that's probably mute. Or maybe I could just call it start at rather than activated at. I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
I feel like they kind of activated at. Does activated at imply billing went through successfully?
Yes.
Because then that could be start at. Start at could be, okay, it starts on the first or whatever. First day or whatever. And it could give them, I don't know anybody that wouldn't want it to start the day they get billed, but maybe there might be some like paperwork or something.
Well, for my use case, it's going to be different for different people's use cases. PayPal has, their documentation.
Just let it go. Just say it.
Well, no, it's hard to describe. It's good and bad. I have seen worse documentation that's better. The documentation that ends up being the easiest is documentation that's just very flat. Of here's all the operations you can do, here's all of the parameters for each of the operations, and doesn't try to be more helpful than that. I find that when documentation is trying to be more helpful than that, then it often gets more confusing. So PayPal's documentation is fragmented. So some of its documentation is under these developer guides. Some of the documentation is under the REST API. Some of the documentation is under the SDKs. And then the SDKs are really useless because they're auto-generated, and they're auto-generated to the least common denominator. So they have lots of extra class crap. So I actually have, I'll just show you this real quick. But I went over this a little bit ago. I'm going to sneeze again. Ah.
Do you get much response from tweeting to like PayPal?
Well, so this is the thing with all of the support accounts on Twitter. They all have this pattern of saying, thanks for contacting us. DM us for more info. And then when you DM them, they never respond. Or if they do respond, they're really quick on Twitter. They get back to you really quick on Twitter, definitely within a day, pretty much all of them. Usually within an hour or two, they get back to you on Twitter saying, thanks for reaching out. Contact us via such and such, DM or our support page or whatever. But then once you enter into their ticket system, they're really slow. And the types of questions that I'm asking are things that, could you just link me to the correct page on the documentation, you know? So it doesn't need to be a private message. So there's no need to do a DM. But anyway, here's the thing that makes me sad, and I'm going to open it up on the screen. But you open it up on your screen because you'll be able to see it there right away versus having to wait otherwise for it to show up, with the delay in the video that you're watching. But if you take a look at this, and I'll show you another one that's much sadder. This doesn't do anything that is useful. So it's just lots of ceremony. And this one, it's not too bad. It's just there's ceremony where there doesn't need to be any ceremony. I can set a header. I don't need a method to set a header, and I certainly don't need a function to set the request body. So it's adding. This is pretty typical. So JavaScript it's a very beautiful language if you just use it classlessly and just with functions and objects. If that's pretty much all you use, functions, objects, and arrays, you can have a wonderful experience. But people have this need to do these over-architected, object-oriented designs, and then it adds lots of abstraction. Because really what I want to know is what headers do I need to set and what things need to be in the request body, etc. But they just add...
And it's hidden behind like an interface function that you have to go look up in some other class. And
but if I just look at the REST documentation that's available here, so here's the makes me happy. I'm going to put that link, and I'm putting these links in the YouTube, Twitch, whatever, the Restream chat. So this one, if you look at the request that it gives you, the sample request with curl, I don't have any questions about this. Well, I do, but they're questions that are answered by looking at the API docs. And with the SDK docs, one of the problems is none of their documentation, this wouldn't be so bad. The thing that makes me sad, it wouldn't be so bad, except that they don't have any documentation for it. Because anytime you want to know what something means, they say, go check out our documentation, rather than having the documentation generated in a way that makes sense so that it's published in the README and it's part of the Node SDK. They say, go read our documentation on our REST API. So they create these wrapper functions and whatnot, but then you don't actually understand what it's doing without looking at the code, and they refer you to documentation that's not related to the SDK itself. And it's like, why bother? Just make a tiny little wrapper and call it a day, and don't put all these functions and classes. And you got to check out I'm going to open up their example. So here's their samples.
So this is what my former employer was like. They stressed that we use design patterns. I have the design patterns, but I think some of them are kind of cool. If you can come up with a cool way to use it, but they were all about it. And if I came up with the straightforward way to do it, they would want to make it a pattern, because in their eyes, they saw it as it's more scalable this way, which I don't. But it hampered the developer's time, because you look and you say, okay, where is that function? Because you look at a class and it says extend something, and you don't always have all those functions readily available. You have to have cscope or something like that to get the kind of reflection of it, and you end up spending more time chasing extended classes and methods and strategy patterns, stuff like that. It's just if you just did it in one function, procedurally, it'd be less complicated.
Yeah. Well, I like breaking down functions if they get basically above what you can view on a single page, so about 50 lines. But sometimes a function needs to be longer. But I think generally, if a function is approaching 50 lines, there might be something there that naturally lends itself into breaking into a second function or whatever. But if you take a look at at this stuff.
Well,
What I
and modularizing is a perfectly valid way to write procedural code that you know is easy to understand. Like, I love that. I love the idea of like pure functions. Like they just do one thing and they return something.
yeah.
Um, I think that's really cool. But you gotta.
Well, I'm gonna bring up some of the code that I did on the screen. It's now that it's done. If I can go find it, I've got too many tabs open as always. But this is going back.
I don't. Go ahead.
Hey, Wucha, what's up? How are you doing? So I've got Will on the line here. You'll hear him. He's the other voice. He's a little bit quieter, but you should still hear him. Okay. And we were making some database design decisions, or not really making decisions, but kind of going through what are some of the pros and cons of ways to structure the database, and just kind of talking through and doing a little bit better than I can do rubber ducking by myself. Actually have another person that's got some database experience to throw some thoughts back and forth. And now I was reviewing some of the stuff that I think I did while you were on here last, and just kind of talking about how the PayPal API is a little sad with it because it's auto-generated code. It's over-engineered because it's auto-generated to the most complicated language that it has to support. So lots of classes and all that stuff. So
Do a fine for prototype. Would you lose it if you see prototype in there?
I don't think there's no point to do a prototype, but prototype is better than classes because prototypes, it turns out that much like the arrow functions, classes appear to be syntax sugar, but it turns out there are nuanced differences with classes where if you just take prototype code and translate it over to class code, there are things that will break. Not usually, but when you get into using the super function or more of the advanced patterns, things break. But I don't see a need to use any of those things. I just don't see where they're useful. I don't think anybody should use prototypes unless you're doing what prototypes are intended for, which is extending the language for a polyfill. The name is prototype. It's not class, it's prototype. Why is it prototype? Because you are prototyping new things in the language. So if you're doing a polyfill on array because new things are being added to the standard, by all means, use prototype. But I can't think of any reason that as an individual creating things in JavaScript, I can't think of any reason that you would need classes or prototypes because you can do everything with objects and then it's simpler.
Yeah.
And I think
an object is just an instantiated version of a class, really, right? And all the data is shared between the object, and all the functions are on the object, right?
Well, so if you look at the screen right now, actually, I need to go down to a different place. This is how I write my code. Let's see if I can find one that's small enough to fit into a single screen. But these ones, they don't quite fit because there's a little bit more that needs to be done. Maybe this one? No. Oh, wow. I need to fix that. That white space is way off. Wucha asks, what do you try to make? I think you're asking me, what am I making? And I'm still working on the PayPal checkout stuff, but I'm working on how I'm going to integrate databases and stuff. And actually, I'm going to have to go soon. Dinner's going to be soon, and I'm going to be off for a few hours. I think the kids are up and my wife, they all take naps. But anyway, let me go through one of these things real quick if I can find a good place. There's products, and then after product is plan. Maybe this one is the smallest one. Yeah, I think this is the best one to try to fit on a single screen. Okay, so this is how I do JavaScript. I do classless JavaScript, and I only deal with plain value objects. I typically don't put functions on objects. There might be some exceptions to that, but I pass objects in and I get objects out, and they're just plain objects. And I create packages that I always start it with a capital letter, and then I attach the functions that I need on that package. And so if I need to save something in a database, I don't put a save method on the object that's the data. I put a save method on the package, and then I pass the data to product.save or product.create or product.remove.
So that's your export.
Yeah, and so the package is my export, and then I'm not passing around a product object that I would call product.remove on the product object. Instead, I would call product.remove, product being the package, product.remove, and then I would pass it the ID to remove. And so this is really clean to me because then everything is just value objects.
So you're really just exporting an interface or like a wrapper around the CRUD functions. Basically, or
Hold on. I think it's about time for me to go. Give me just a second. Yes.
Dinner.
All right. I will. Right now?
Well, finish up.
Okay, I'll finish up. Okay.
I'm doing dinner too.
So yeah, I can take 2 minutes to just wrap up our conversation and whatnot. What were you saying?
I honestly forgot.
You said export an interface, which
Oh yeah.
I
You can export like a set of functions that like are an interface to what like you want to expose.
yeah, it depends on how you use the word interface because it's not interface in terms of
I don't mean like a class interface. I just mean
Yeah.
like a foreign function interface.
Well, it's
That
just-
type of thing.
it's the collection of functions that do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
So
You shouldn't have to worry what the functions are called, like product.create, right? Because you're gonna give them the tools that they need.
yeah, I mean, I would just say whereas most people would attach functions onto the object itself, I just attach functions onto the package. Now, if I'm using Go's a different story because with Go, it's all duck typed. And so when you declare functions, well, you can declare functions on a struct, but then you can serialize and deserialize the struct, and there isn't class state. There's not public private class state. One of the problems with classes in general, the way that most programming languages implement them and the way that most programmers use them, is that you get deeply nested state, which makes your stuff hard to test. And it also makes it hard to save to a database. And it makes it hard to transmit across the wire through an API. And so you end up with this, you just end up with, it's worse. It just ends up being worse. If you just use value objects, especially if you're doing node code, Node in JavaScript, you're dealing with everything's happening over a network. That's the use case of it. If you were doing Rust, it might be a little bit different, although I think you'd still get the same benefits. But Rust, you build desktop apps with Rust. And in a language like Swift, where you're building, your UI into your program, and maybe it's a little bit different with that because so much state is bundled into the UI. But when you're talking about services and microservices and service-oriented architecture, all that stuff, I don't think classes make any sense at all. And it'd be interesting for me to implement a chess game this way, because I think when I was in college, the chess game was the thing where you had all the inheritances and you had all of it ended up being complicated, but I think it's because they taught us a complicated way to do it. It'd be interesting to take my old college C++ chess game and rewrite it for the web and see if if it's not actually really simple following a pattern like this. Anyway, I am going to have to hop off. What Wuchu asks React for life or Vue for life, and I say definitely neither. Svelte looks the simplest. Vue used to be very simple, but then they made everything complicated. Vue 1 was pretty decent. They just had a couple of the common errors of design that Angular 1 had. And I am exploring if it's possible to just use the DOM and create a framework that doesn't require build tools and all the hoopla. Anyway, what was it that you just said, Will?
Oh, I gotta eat dinner.
Oh, you got to eat dinner
I
too?
appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, thanks for joining in.
For sure, man.
All right, I'll catch you later. Adios, Will. Okay. And to everybody else, thumbs up if you got them, thumbs down if you don't. But if you like what you like, you get more of what you like. And if you'd like to subscribe and follow along with these, then hit the the bell for personalized recommendations. And I'll catch you later. I've got to go eat dinner, and then I'm going to have some time with the fam. So y'all have a good one. I'll stick around for maybe 10 more seconds, see if there's any last questions, but I don't know that I'll have much time to answer them. I need to go eat dinner. Anyway. Thumbs up. Awesome. Adios.